Welcome to tonight's sleep story, which will not only give you a historically accurate view of how printing presses operated in the 1920s, but also of the general social, technological, and political happenings in 1920s Chicago. You'll find yourself in the middle of a fascinating world, where Prohibition has spawned over 10,000 secret speakeasies. Police corruption runs so deep that half the force takes bootlegger bribes, and Al Capone's gang wars make headlines you'll be printing. This story places you in the shoes of a skilled printing press operator at the Chicago Evening Herald newspaper. Through your peaceful night shift, you'll discover the meditative rhythms of the great machines, the satisfying routines of the craft, and the quiet camaraderie of the night crew, including their whispered conversations about everything from President Coolidge's policies to the industrial alcohol operations of the Jenner brothers. Throughout your story, you'll find gentle breathing and relaxation cues woven into the narrative that you can follow along with to guide you to sleep. If you enjoyed this story, please click the like and subscribe buttons so we can continue adding new stories regularly. Make yourself comfortable, and if you haven't already, let your eyes gently close as we begin your restful adventure into the world of ink and newsprint. You are now in the city of Chicago, Illinois, in the year 1928. Take a deep breath in through your nose, filling your lungs completely with the cool Chicago evening air. Hold it for just a moment and release it slowly through your mouth. Feel how your shoulders soften and sink with each exhale, releasing any tension from your day. You're about to begin another night shift at the Chicago Evening Herald, where the massive printing presses wait to transform blank newsprint into tomorrow's stories. Breathe in once more, deep and slow, and as you exhale, let yourself settle even deeper into comfort. Now, let's get your workday underway. The elevated train passes overhead as you approach the brick facade of the Chicago Evening Herald building on South Wacker Drive. Your breath forms small clouds in the November air, each exhale carrying away the concerns of the modern world. The city around you pulses with jazz-age energy. Model T Fords navigate the cobblestones, their distinctive puttering engines and brass radiators gleaming under the street lamps. You've noticed more of them lately. Henry Ford's assembly lines have brought the price down to just $290, making them affordable even on a pressman's wages. The new Michigan Avenue Bridge, completed just 6 years ago, carries streams of these automobiles over the Chicago River, while the older horse-drawn wagons still clatter along the side streets. A streetcar clangs past on its tracks, packed with evening commuters, and somewhere above, the L train, elevated just 30 years ago to solve the muddy street problem, rattles along its iron rails. You pull your wool overcoat closer against the wind that funnels between the tall buildings, earning Chicago its reputation as the Windy City, and push through the heavy oak doors into the warmth of the press room anteroom. The Chicago Evening Herald is one of 7 major dailies fighting for readers in this newspaper-mad city. Unlike the morning papers, the Tribune with its Republican lean, or Hearst's Examiner with its sensational headlines, evening papers like yours catch the workers heading home, hungry for news of the day. The competition is fierce. Each paper publishes multiple editions, constantly updating to scoop the rivals. The Herald alone puts out 5 editions between noon and midnight. You've heard that Chicago consumes more newspapers per capita than any other American city. A badge of honor in this age of information. The building itself tells the story of this newspaper war, with its modern presses in the basement and telegraph wires snaking in from every direction, bringing news from around the world. Inside, the familiar symphony of machinery greets you like an old friend. The building thrums with life, typewriters on the floors above, the distant voices of newsboys preparing for the morning edition, and beneath it all, the steady pulse of the Goss rotary presses in the basement. You breathe in deeply, your lungs filling with the distinctive cocktail of machine oil, newsprint, and that sharp metallic tang of printer's ink. Your shoulders begin to soften as you hang your coat on the brass hook marked with your employee number, 347, and retrieve your ink-stained canvas apron from its place. Above you, the newsroom operates in controlled chaos, even at this hour. Reporters don't have telephones at their desks, too expensive and too noisy. Instead, they queue for the phone booths along the wall, shouting their stories to rewrite men who can type faster than most people can think. The leg men, reporters who chase stories on foot across the city, stumble in with their notes, often scribbled on scraps of paper or matchbook covers. The city desk, that holy altar of journalism, coordinates it all, with editors deciding which stories make the front page and which get buried inside. You can hear the message tubes whooshing overhead, carrying copy from floor to floor at speeds that still seem miraculous. In your father's day, everything moved by copy boy. Now, compressed air does the work of a dozen runners. The locker room is quiet at this hour, most of the day shift having departed for their homes in neighborhoods like Bridgeport and back of the yards. You change into your work clothes, sturdy cotton shirt with sleeves you'll soon roll up, canvas trousers that have seen countless nights of labor, and the heavy leather boots that protect your feet from the occasional splash of cleaning solvent. Through the frosted glass window, you can see the glow of the State Street theaters and the silhouettes of flappers and their beaux heading to the jazz clubs. You know some are bound for less public establishments, the Speakeasy in Kowalski's basement, 2 blocks over, or the one hidden behind Martello's barber shop, where knowing to say, "Joe sent me," gets you past the steel door. These hidden saloons have sprouted like mushrooms since Prohibition began 6 years ago. Chicago alone has over 10,000 of them, more than the number of legal bars before the Volstead Act. Everyone goes. Society matrons sip gin alongside factory workers. Judges drink next to the criminals they sentence by day. The hypocrisy doesn't escape you, but it's simply how the city operates now. But your world tonight is here, in the mechanical heart of the news. As you button your work shirt, you feel the weight of your week's pay in your trouser pocket. $32, good wages for skilled work. It's enough to cover your $8 monthly rent at the boarding house, with plenty left for food, streetcar fare, and maybe a picture show on Sunday. Your pressman's wages are nearly double what the elevator operators make, and even better than most factory workers. The union fought hard for these rates, understanding that skilled pressmen are the backbone of the newspaper industry. You remember your father making half this amount just 10 years ago, though admittedly $1 bought more then. Coffee was a nickel, not the 7 cents it costs now. Descending the worn wooden stairs to the press floor, each step takes you deeper into the building's industrial core. The temperature rises with each level. The massive machines generate their own climate, a perpetual summer in the depths of autumn. You pause at the landing, letting your breathing slow and deepen, feeling the vibration of the presses travel up through the soles of your boots, through your bones, settling into a steady rhythm that matches your heartbeat. The night foreman, O'Sullivan, nods to you from his desk, his green visor catching the overhead industrial lights as he marks your arrival in the ledger. You pass by the composing room on your way down, catching a glimpse of the line casting operators at their keyboards. These machines, invented just 40 years ago, revolutionized the printing industry. Each operator sits before a keyboard like a giant typewriter, but instead of paper, they produce lines of metal type. The machine is a marvel, circulating metal matrices that drop into place as the operator types, then a pot of molten lead that casts each complete line. The operators work in a deafening clatter of falling brass and clanking machinery. Many of the older operators are partially deaf from years of exposure to the noise. They communicate in gestures and lip reading, a private language born of necessity. Before these machines, hand compositors set each letter individually. A skilled man might manage 1,000 letters per hour. Now, a good operator can set 6,000. Progress has its price, though. You think of the old compositors, many now working as mere distributors, sorting the used type back into cases. Your station awaits. Press number 3, a Goss Straightline that stretches nearly 40 feet and stands 2 stories tall. She's been running since 1919, printing everything from Harding's election to the daily racing forms. You run your hand along her cast iron frame, feeling the warmth of her operation, the subtle vibrations that tell you she's running true. The previous operator, Kowalski, has left his usual note tucked behind the ink fountain. Running sweet. Watch the folder on Section B. You smile at his careful handwriting, evidence of the pride these men take in their craft, and begin your pre-shift inspection. The first task is checking the ink levels in the fountains. You climb the metal stairs alongside the press, your movements automatic after 3 years on the night shift. The fountain keys are cool in your palm as you adjust the flow, watching the viscous black ink spread across the steel rollers like molasses. Each adjustment requires patience. Too much ink, and the pages blur. Too little, and the words fade like whispers. Your breath finds its natural rhythm as you work, steady and calm, matching the patient pace required for this delicate calibration. The ink has its own perfume tonight, linseed oil base with carbon black, a formula unchanged since before the war. The printing ink itself tells a story of American industrial transformation. Before the Great War, Germany dominated the ink and dye industry, their chemical expertise unmatched. But the war cut off supplies, forcing American companies to develop their own formulas. The carbon black comes from Pennsylvania, where natural gas is burned in special chambers to produce the fine soot. The linseed oil is pressed from flax seeds grown in Minnesota and the Dakotas. Mixed together with precise amounts of varnish and dryers, they create this essential fluid that transforms blank paper into readable news. You've noticed the quality has improved since the war years. when inferior substitutes sometimes cause the ink to fade or smudge. The smell brings back memories of your apprenticeship, when learning to judge ink consistency by sight and feel was considered an essential skill. Moving along the press, you inspect the paper rolls in the reel room. The newsprint arrives from the Wisconsin mills, massive rolls that weigh nearly a ton each. You check the tension, running your fingers along the edge of the paper, feeling for imperfections that could cause a web break. The paper feeds through the press at nearly 30,000 impressions per hour, a continuous river of stories flowing from roll to folder. Your breathing naturally synchronizes with the steady movement of the paper through the rollers, creating a meditation of motion and breath. These rolls come from the paper mills of Wisconsin, where vast forests feed an insatiable appetite for newsprint. Cities like Appleton and Neenah have transformed from quiet river towns into industrial powerhouses, their mills running day and night. The Fox River, once clear enough to see bottom, now runs murky with paper pulp waste. Progress always demands its tribute. The rolls arrive by rail, sometimes by ship, through the Great Lakes when the weather permits. Each roll represents dozens of trees, processed with sulfite to break down the wood fibers, then pressed and dried into these massive cylinders. You've heard that Chicago newspapers alone consume nearly 100,000 tons of newsprint annually. Entire forests transformed into daily news. Tonight, you'll need to perform a web change, threading a new roll through the complex pathway of the press. You signal to Murphy, the assistant pressman, and together you begin the intricate dance of paper threading. The expired roll must be spliced to the new one using the pasting table, a delicate operation requiring perfect timing. You spread the special adhesive paste evenly across the prepared edge, your movements calm and precise, despite the press running at full speed. The flying pasteur mechanism engages smoothly, and the new roll begins feeding seamlessly. A slow, satisfied exhale escapes you as you appreciate the engineering marvel that allows continuous printing without stopping the press. The stereotype plates for tonight's edition are already locked into the cylinder, their raised metal letters spelling out tomorrow's news. You examine them with practiced eyes, stories of Coolidge's policies, the latest from the Scope's trial aftermath, advertisements for Sears Roebuck's winter catalog. Each plate was cast just hours ago in the composing room upstairs, where line casting operators transformed reporters' copy into metal type. You adjust the impression cylinder slightly, ensuring even pressure across the entire page width. A call from above signals an incoming plate change. Breaking news from the night wire. You watch as the stereotypers arrive with a still warm curved plate, fresh from the casting box. The process fascinates you even after all these years. They've taken a paper mold from the composed type, curved it to fit the cylinder, and poured molten metal to create this perfect printing surface. You help unlock the chase, removing the outdated plate carefully. It's still valuable and will be melted down tomorrow for reuse. The new plate slides into position with metallic precision, and you check its alignment with your steel straight edge. The headline reads, "Federal Agents Raid South Side Speakeasy," another casualty of Prohibition's ongoing war. You wonder if it was one of the Jenna Brothers' operations, their industrial alcohol plant on Taylor Street supposedly producing cleaning fluid, while really supplying half the speaks in Little Italy. The Jennas had cornered the market on legal industrial alcohol, then redistilled it and added flavoring to create a harsh but drinkable product. Their operation was so brazen they even had government permits for the alcohol, claiming it was for legitimate commercial use. Such is the twisted logic of prohibition, making criminals of ordinary citizens while creating empires for those willing to break the law. With fresh plates installed, you must perform the delicate task of adjusting the ink fountains for optimal coverage. You climb the narrow ladder to the fountain keys, each one controlling the flow to a different column width. The Sunday edition requires more finesse. The comic section uses spot color, and you mix a special batch of red ink for Crazy Cat and Little Orphan Annie. You add the red paste to the extra fountain, working it with your ink knife until it reaches the perfect consistency. Too thick and it won't flow properly. Too thin and the colors will appear washed out. The smell of the pigments fills your nostrils. Iron oxide for the red chrome yellow waiting in another can for tomorrow's color work. Your breathing remains steady and rhythmic as you work the ink, feeling its texture change under your knife. Each breath helping you maintain the patient focus this task requires. With the preliminaries complete, you settle into the rhythm of the night shift. The press runs steadily, her mechanical song filling the cavernous space. You position yourself at the delivery end, where the folded papers emerge in a continuous stream. Every few minutes, you pull a copy for inspection, checking the registration, the ink density, the fold accuracy. The papers are still warm from the friction of printing, and you notice their distinctive scent. It's the smell of democracy in action, of information flowing freely through the arteries of the city. Around you, the night crew moves with choreographed precision. The flyboys, young men who manually remove copies for quality control, work with swift efficiency. The oiler makes his rounds with his long-spouted can, lubricating the thousands of moving parts that keep the press running. Everyone has their role in this industrial ballet, and you feel your body relax into the familiar patterns of work. There's comfort in being part of something larger than yourself, a cog in the great machine that keeps the city informed. Many of your fellow workers live in the ethnic neighborhoods that define Chicago's geography. The Irish dominate Bridgeport, where Mayor Daley was born. The Poles cluster in the northwest side parishes, their churches serving as community anchors. Little Italy spreads along Taylor Street, while the newer arrivals from the American South have transformed the South Side's Black Belt into a vibrant community of jazz clubs and businesses. The Great Migration has brought nearly 100,000 African Americans to Chicago in the last decade, fleeing Jim Crow laws for industrial jobs. They've faced their own struggles. The race riots of 1919 still a fresh wound, but they've carved out their place in the city's landscape. Your own crew reflects this diversity. Murphy from County Cork, Kowalski, whose parents fled Poland, young Tommy, whose family came up from Mississippi just last year. The press room is one of the few places where these different worlds intersect, united by ink and sweat. Young Tommy Fitzgerald, the newest apprentice, approaches with questions in his eyes. You remember being in his shoes just 3 years ago, overwhelmed by the complexity of the press. You motion him over to the folder mechanism, speaking in calm, measured tones that somehow carry over the machine noise. Feel here. You guide his hand to the folder blade. When she's running true, the vibration is smooth as silk. Any stuttering means the gripper timing needs adjustment. His face lights with understanding, and you're reminded of Old Man Schultz teaching you the same lesson. The knowledge passes down through generations of pressmen, each adding their own wisdom to the craft. A sudden change in the press's rhythm catches your trained ear. You move swiftly but calmly to the delivery end where papers are starting to show signs of hickeys. Small white spots where dried ink or paper dust prevents proper impression. You signal for a blanket wash, and the crew springs into action. The press slows to a crawl as you and Murphy work in tandem, applying benzene to the rubber blankets with practiced strokes. The solvent's sharp smell cuts through the ink-heavy air, and you instinctively adjust your breathing, taking shallower breaths until the worst of it dissipates. The blankets clean. You watch carefully as the press returns to speed, satisfaction filling you as the hickeys disappear and clean. Sharp impressions resume. Midnight approaches, and with it comes the first edition run. The tempo increases as the press speed is adjusted upward. You watch the counter carefully. 25,000 copies for the early edition that will hit the streets by 3 a.m. The sound of the press shifts to a higher pitch, and you feel your breath naturally quicken with the increased pace, before consciously slowing it again, staying alert but calm. This is when experience matters most, when you must trust your instincts to catch any problem before it becomes a crisis. The increased speed brings new challenges. The folder mechanism requires constant attention at these speeds, and you apply your feeler gauge to check the gap between the folding blade and the cylinder. Too tight and the papers will jam, too loose and the fold will be crooked. You make minute adjustments, feeling the mechanism respond under your touch. The gauge reads precisely 0.03 inches. Perfect. Nearby, you notice static electricity building up in the delivery section, causing pages to cling together. You adjust the tinsel bars, thin metal strips that discharge the static, and watch with satisfaction as the papers begin flowing smoothly again. Between edition runs, you undertake the meticulous task of cleaning the ink fountains. Old ink builds up like geological layers, each night adding to the accumulation. You work with your putty knife, scraping away the oxidized ink that has formed a skin on the fountain surface. The repetitive motion becomes meditative. Scrape, wipe, scrape, wipe. Your breathing falls into the same rhythm, each exhale coinciding with the completion of a stroke. Fresh ink must be added, and you pump it from the drum with steady strokes, watching the viscous black liquid flow into the fountain. The ink has warmed from the friction of the rollers, releasing more of its linseed oil aroma into the air. The familiar scent grounds you in the present moment, each breath a reminder of your place in this nightly ritual. During a brief pause between runs, you step outside to the loading dock for fresh air. The city has transformed in the hours since your shift began. The theater crowds have dispersed, replaced by the night workers like yourself. The bakery drivers making pre-dawn deliveries, the milk wagon horses navigating empty streets, the occasional patrol officer walking his beat. The cold night air fills your lungs, cleansing them of the press room atmosphere. though you notice it carries its own burden of coal smoke from the thousands of furnaces heating Chicago's homes and businesses. This late in November, the lake effect adds an extra bite to the wind, and you can smell the approaching winter mixed with the ever-present scent from the stockyards miles to the south. Each breath of this complex Chicago air sharpens your senses, the cold cutting through any drowsiness. Above, stars struggle to shine through the industrial haze that blankets the city like a second sky. And you think of how these same stars looked down on Gutenberg as he pulled the first printed page from his press nearly 500 years ago. Back inside, the second edition preparations begin. This is the main run, 100,000 copies that will be distributed across the city and suburbs. You perform your checks with renewed focus, adjusting the folder tension, monitoring the ink flow, watching for any signs of wear on the plates. The press hums with contentment, her well-maintained mechanisms performing their ancient dance of impression and release. You've learned to read her moods like a musician reads their instrument, knowing when she needs a minor adjustment or when to let her run free. The night brings an unexpected challenge: registration problems on the financial pages where columns of stock prices must align perfectly. You study the misaligned columns through your magnifying loupe, determining that the plate has shifted slightly in its lockup. Working with the stereotyper, you loosen the wedges that hold the plate secure and make microscopic adjustments. It takes several test runs, each one bringing you closer to perfection. Throughout this delicate process, your breathing remains patient and measured, each breath helping you maintain the steady hands needed for such precise work. Finally, the columns align in perfect registration, numbers marching in their orderly rows to inform tomorrow's traders. The composing room sends down a messenger. They've received a priority advertisement from Marshall Field's department store, a full-page spread announcing their Thanksgiving sale. This means removing an entire page of classified ads and replacing it with the new plate. You work with the make-ready team, pulling proofs and adjusting the packing beneath the plate to ensure even impression across the large illustration of winter coats and furnishings. The detailed engraving requires precise pressure. Too little and the fine lines disappear, too much and the ink spreads. You add tissue-thin sheets beneath specific areas, building up the packing until the proof shows every button and fold of fabric in crisp detail. As the night deepens, you find yourself entering an almost meditative state. Your hands move automatically, checking, adjusting, monitoring, while your mind floats free. This is the gift of skilled manual labor, the ability to be simultaneously present and transcendent. The repetitive nature of the work becomes a kind of prayer, each perfectly printed page an offering to the gods of communication and commerce. Your breathing has long since found its perfect rhythm, rising and falling with the press's own respiratory cycle, creating a unity of human and machine that defines the industrial age. The zinc stereotype plates must be changed for the late city edition, incorporating the latest news from the night wire services. You assist the stereotypers as they unlock the old plates and install the new ones, marveling at the speed with which breaking news can be transformed into printed word. Stories of gangland activities, carefully worded to avoid libel, share space with society news and the latest stock prices from New York. Each plate clicks into place with satisfying precision, ready to transfer its message thousands of times before dawn. 3 in the morning brings the ritual of the lunch break, though it's dinner for the night shift. You gather with your fellow pressmen in the break room, sharing coffee from large thermos flasks and sandwiches wrapped in waxed paper. The talk is of union matters, rumors of wage negotiations, concerns about the new offset printing technology that threatens traditional jobs. But tonight, the conversation is comfortable, companionable. You're all brothers in ink, bound by the shared experience of bringing the news to life in the small hours when most of the city sleeps. O'Reilly, a 20-year veteran, tells stories of the old days before electric motors, when the presses were powered by massive steam engines in the basement. You could feel the whole building breathe, he says, his eyes distant with memory. The belts and pulleys singing their own song, and if the engineer wasn't careful with the pressure, the whole edition could run slow. The conversation shifts to politics. There's disagreement about President Coolidge. Some of the men appreciate his business-friendly policies and the booming economy. Silent Cal keeps government out of our hair, Murphy says, and look at the stock market climbing. But Kowalski shakes his head, worried about farmers going bankrupt while city speculators get rich. My brother in Iowa can't make his mortgage payments, he says quietly. All this prosperity ain't reaching everyone. You listen with deep appreciation for these night shift debates, where working men hash out the great issues of the day between editions. Murphy mentions his brother works at the Tribune, running their new Goss Comet press. 48 pages in one pass, he says, with a mixture of awe and concern. But she breaks down twice as often as our old girl here. You all nod knowingly. Reliability trumps speed when you're racing against deadline. The conversation drifts to safer topics. The Cubs' chances next season. The new talking pictures at the Biograph Theater. Whose daughter is marrying whose son. Someone mentions the beer wars heating up between the North and South Side gangs, but O'Reilly waves it off. Let Capone and the North Siders shoot each other, he says. Though I heard Johnny Torrio's smart, handed the whole operation to Al last year, and retired to Italy with his millions. A younger pressman laughs bitterly. My beat cop brother-in-law just bought a new Packard on a patrolman's salary. Everyone knows he's on Capone's payroll. The room goes quiet for a moment. Everyone knows someone taking bootlegger money, but it's dangerous to talk about it too openly. The corruption runs so deep that an honest cop is rarer than a sober judge these days. Some estimate half the police force takes bribes, from the patrolman who looks the other way to the captains who warn of upcoming raids. It's the cost of trying to enforce an unpopular law in a city that runs on beer and whiskey. These night shift conversations weave the fabric of your working life, creating bonds that daylight workers rarely understand. Returning to your press, you notice how the building has settled into its deep night rhythm. Upstairs, only the night editor and a skeleton crew of reporters remain, waiting for any breaking news that might require a plate change. The press runs with increased confidence now, as if she too knows that the hardest part of the shift is behind you. You perform your rounds with practiced ease, each movement flowing into the next, like a well-rehearsed dance. The paper web occasionally breaks, an inevitability in any printing operation. When it happens, You spring into action with your fellow operators, working to rethread the paper through the complex pathway of rollers and cylinders. It's moments like these when the teamwork becomes most apparent, each man knowing exactly his role in minimizing downtime. You guide the paper with steady hands, your breath calm and controlled despite the urgency, until the press resumes her song and the papers once again flow into the delivery conveyor. Tonight's web break is particularly challenging. The paper has wrapped around the former roller, creating what pressmen call a wrap-up. You shut down the press completely, and the sudden silence is almost shocking after hours of continuous noise. Working methodically, you cut away the tangled paper with your knife, careful not to damage the roller's surface. The wrapped paper must be removed in strips, each one pulled away with patient determination. Young Tommy watches intently as you show him how to feel for any remaining fragments that might cause another break. The roller should feel smooth as glass, you tell him, guiding his fingers along the surface. Any roughness, any little bit of paper left behind, and we'll be doing this again in an hour. With the roller clean, you begin the complex process of rethreading. The paper must pass through 37 different rollers, each one requiring proper tension and alignment. You work your way through the press, threading over and under, through the former folder, past the cutting cylinders, into the delivery fly. Your movements are practiced, automatic, yet you remain fully present, each breath keeping you centered as the paper path takes shape. The other pressmen work in synchronization. One man at the reel, stand ready to control the feed. Another at the folder, preparing to engage the mechanisms in sequence. When you give the signal, the press starts slowly, just crawling speed, and you watch with satisfaction as the paper flows correctly through its serpentine path. As 4 o'clock approaches, you begin to prepare for the shift change. The ink fountains must be documented, their levels recorded for the day operator. You clean the accumulated ink from the edges of the rollers with solvent and rags, the sharp chemical smell cutting through the omnipresent scent of printing ink. Each task is performed with care. This is not just a job, but a craft, and the press deserves respect for her faithful service. Your final task involves checking the gripper bars in the folder mechanism. These small metal fingers grab each sheet and pull it through the folding process thousands of times per hour. You apply your feeler gauge to each gripper, ensuring proper clearance. One shows signs of wear, not enough to cause immediate problems, but worth noting in the maintenance log. You make a detailed entry, sketching the location and describing the wear pattern. The day shift will order a replacement from the Goss parts catalog, another small act in the endless maintenance that keeps these mechanical giants running. In the dimming light of pre-dawn, you perform one last walk around your press. Your hand trails along her frame, feeling for any unusual vibrations, listening for any sounds out of place. Near the drive shaft, you detect a slight warmth that wasn't there at shift start. You investigate further, discovering a bearing running hotter than normal. Not critical yet, but you add another note to the log, recommending additional lubrication and monitoring. These small observations, accumulated over thousands of shifts, are what separate a good pressman from a great one. The final edition numbers are tallied. 127,000 copies, printed, folded, and stacked. You feel a sense of satisfaction as you record the figures in the logbook, your handwriting joining the entries of hundreds of shifts before you. Tomorrow, these papers will line breakfast tables across Chicago, will be read on street cars and elevated trains, will inform and entertain and influence. But for now, they are simply the product of a night's honest labor, evidence of the vital role you play in the machinery of modern life. The delivery crew has been busy throughout the night, bundling papers by route and loading them onto the waiting trucks. You sometimes help with the count, especially for the suburban editions that require precise numbers. Each bundle is tied with twine using the special pressman's knot that won't slip during transport. The smell of fresh newsprint mingles with the exhaust from the delivery trucks idling outside. You watch as the last of the night's run disappears into the fleet of vehicles that will fan out across the city, racing against the dawn to deliver the news. There's poetry in this moment. Thousands of copies of your work, spreading like seeds on the wind, each one carrying stories that will shape conversations and decisions throughout the day. The day shift begins to arrive, bringing with them the energy of the waking world. You brief your replacement on the press's performance, noting the slight adjustment needed on the folder and the fresh ink drums that were opened during the night. There's a ritual to this handover, a passing of responsibility that maintains the continuous operation of the press. She never truly sleeps. This mechanical marvel only changes her attendance like a patient in perpetual care. Your counterpart, Anderson, listens carefully as you describe the night's challenges and victories. You show him the wear on the gripper bar, the bearing that needs watching, the new stereotype plate that was installed for the Marshall Field's advertisement. He nods knowingly, already planning his shift's approach to these issues. The two of you stand for a moment in comfortable silence, watching the press run, sharing the wordless understanding that comes from working the same machine on different shifts. You're partners in this endeavor, though you rarely see each other except in these brief moments of transition. Before leaving, you make one final check of the stereotyping room. The night's used plates are stacked ready for the melting pot, each one having served its purpose of transferring words to paper thousands of times. You run your finger along one final time, feeling the raised letters that spelled out the night's headlines. Tomorrow these plates will be molten metal again, ready to be recast into new stories. The cycle continues endlessly, metal to words to metal again, like the breathing of some great industrial organism. In the locker room, you change back into your street clothes, your body tired but satisfied. The physical exhaustion is honest, earned through skill and attention, rather than mere exertion. You wash the worst of the ink from your hands at the industrial sink, though you know the stains in the creases of your palms won't fade for days. They're the badge of your trade, the mark of a craftsman in the age of information. Emerging onto the street, you're greeted by a Chicago dawn. The sky above the lake is painted in shades of pearl and coral, the first streetcars of the morning passing on their routes. Newsboys are already hawking the early edition you helped create, their cries of, "Paper, get your morning paper," echoing off the building facades. You purchase a copy with a smile, feeling the still warm newsprint, checking the registration one final time out of habit. The walk to your boarding house takes you through awakening neighborhoods. Shopkeepers raise their metal grates, bakeries exhale the scent of fresh bread, and the city prepares for another day of commerce and dreams. Your steps are heavy with fatigue, but your mind is light, already beginning the transition from the mechanical world of the press room to the quiet sanctuary of sleep that awaits. As you climb the stairs to your room, each step takes you further from the world of deadlines and editions. You think of your press, still running under another's care, her steady rhythm continuing without you. There's poetry in this continuity, in being part of an endless cycle of information and rest, work, and renewal. Each breath you take now is slower, deeper, matching the peaceful rhythm of approaching sleep. In your simple room, you draw the curtains against the morning light, creating an artificial night for your reversed schedule. The sounds of the waking city become muffled, distant, like the press noise heard from several floors away. You slip between cool sheets, your body grateful for the horizontal position after hours of standing and climbing. The pillow accepts your head like an old friend, and you release a long, contented exhale, letting go of the last tensions of the working night. As sleep approaches, your mind drifts through images of the night, the hypnotic movement of the rollers, the cascade of finished papers, the satisfaction of work well done. Somewhere in the city, people are unfolding the papers you helped create, reading the news you helped deliver. But that world grows distant now, fading like newsprint left in the sun. Your breathing deepens, becomes regular, as you sink into dreams where printing presses transform into gentle waves, their rhythm carrying you deeper into restful sleep. The ink-stained hands that served the city through the night now rest motionless, their work complete, as you drift into the peaceful darkness where all good workers find their reward.